I realized this person I had been was a performance. And I was like, well, who is that? Like, what am I doing? Like, what? Like, I just looked at my life and I was like, none of this is like what I wanted, you know? And so I kind of started over. But before I knew how to start over, there was this period of just being like, you're kind of like in the wilderness, like you're sort of in the underworld, to use like to extend the death metaphor. You're in the underworld. You don't really know what to do, where to go, who are you? If you're not that person, who are you now?
I'm Charla Larston. I've been a TV writer for almost a decade, but it wasn't that long ago that quitting my day job and moving to Hollywood was nothing but a pipe dream. After lots of failures, many mistakes, and many lessons learned, I've now written for 7 TV shows, 2 features, and sold 3 TV pilots. I've done all this through imposter syndrome, burnout, and with zero roadmap. On the Working Writer podcast, I pull back the curtain on breaking in and teach screenwriters and creatives how to thrive both personally and professionally. Without further ado, let's get to work. Welcome to another episode of the Working Writer podcast. Charla here. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for joining me once again. On this episode of The Working Writer, I invited writer and alumni of the Werking Writer School, Nicole Kelly, to come on and talk about her journey as a writer. I think a lot of times we look at creative careers and we think that they're really a straight trajectory. But as I've tried to do with this podcast and with so much of the work that I've done, is to just demonstrate that it's really not a straight path. And that all of us deal with so much insecurity and self-doubt and imposter syndrome along the way. And my goal this year really is to make that okay, is to make the process and to make the experience of becoming a creative and pursuing a creative career something that is not mysterious or mystical, but practical and realistic, and something that's normal and natural and just the way of being a human being. In this episode of the podcast, Nicole and I talk about self-sabotage, ego death, not being able to finish, and so much more. As usual, I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, here's my episode with Nicole Kelly. Nicole Kelly, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me on the Working Writer podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, Nicole, I'm like dying to jump right in because even when I asked you to be on this podcast, your first response was, why? And I'm dying to know, why is that your response, first and foremost?
Why is that my response? I think I received your email. I was excited. I've been following your various projects, the podcast, and the newsletter since I graduated from the program. So I did assume it probably had something to do with me being an alumnus of your TV school, but still, I just was wondering. I think I was wondering, like, what is your idea of like what I'm doing with my life and my time?
That is so
and have
funny.
You made a mistake?
That is so funny. I literally was like, you're my first email. I mean, my first podcast of 2024. So I'm really excited, of course, to jump back in. And I remember like I was in India while I sent this, like just on vacation with my family. Because my husband's Indian. So we go there all, often. But and I came back with a cold, so I sound great. But I was just like, let me just fire off a few emails and just get some podcast episodes ready for the new year. And you were one of the first people I thought of because I just remember your bio being so interesting when you came into the program because you're not from a TV background. And so, you were quite different to me from the other people that had applied. So I was really interested in why you had applied and things like that. But I just remember like you were the first one to reply to that email, and you were just like, I would love to, but why? And I just thought that was so funny because I don't know, like I'm just like, I don't know if it's a thing about writers or because so many writers are so similar, like they never think they've done anything and are deserving of any recognition. And it's hilarious. Mm-hmm. And also it's just like, yeah, this is a free podcast, girl. Like, kidding. You're not getting paid. You're literally, you're getting paid in the joy of talking to me, which, truly is very, a low stipend. But Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Of
I
course.
wanted to ask you, because part of your bio is that you live partly in Mexico City, and I think you're calling
Mhm.
in from Mexico City right now.
I
So I'm dying
am.
to know, how long have you lived there, and what
Yeah.
prompted that move?
Yeah, I am at home in Mexico City. I moved here from LA in March last year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been like 8, 9 months at this point. And what prompted it was I get this question a lot, obviously, but it's like many things. Um, One was just that like I had lived in LA for 15 years by the time by like February of last year it was about 15 years. And I think around like year 10 of living in LA. First of all, I went to LA for the summer and then just like never left. Um and so like around like 10 years in, I was like, I feel like I should like just start thinking about like where else I might want to go. Not because I didn't love LA. I do love LA. I'm actually gonna be in LA for the whole month of February, but just because I was sort of like it was the longest I had lived anywhere, and I just wanted to like sort of see like what like life is short, like what else is out there. And then I spent like 5 more years, in the middle of which was COVID, of course, or quarantine, like auditioning different places in the U.S. Like different. I tried New Orleans. I thought about Detroit. I thought about Atlanta. I thought about Nashville, like near where I'm from. Chicago, like just like different. I was like, where else? It's just like nothing really felt right. Like I feel like it's kind of like dating. It's kind of like it just feels right or it doesn't. And then last year I spent like during the time I was in the program, for example, I because I'm from the South, I'm from Tennessee, and during the COVID, I like wound up going home for 9 months when one of my parents got sick. And then I was like, oh, after that, I was like, I think I like want to return to the South. And so then a couple of different things like led me to thinking about Durham, North Carolina. And so I spent summer of not last summer, I guess it was summer of the year before last, 2022 in North Carolina. Which is cool. But I had started dating someone right before that. This is such a long, it's gonna give me such a long-winded response. The response, basically, the answer is, I tried all these different places. None of them really felt right. Someone I was dating was like, "I'm moving to Mexico City. I'm gonna go there for a month and check it out." I said, "Cool, I'll go with you. I'm not gonna move there, but I will go with you and like sort of see what it's like." But the thing is, like, I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, including Mexico City, just like over the last 10 years. Like, I just feel like whenever there's a big change or transition in my life, somehow I wind up back in Mexico. The last time was I was going through a big transition around the time I turned 30, and I wound up living in Guadalajara for like 9 months. Like, I didn't really plan it, but kind of just like was working remotely, so I stayed there for a while. And just like really love the culture, like really love the history of this place. Just really love being here and always feel really good being here. I mean, I know you've also been here recently, so you know, like it's a really Mexico City is a really dope city. It's gotten much
It
more
is.
diverse recently. And I think like I had really clarified like what I was looking for in a place to live in a way that previous trips to Mexico, when I could have just stayed forever, I just like it just kind of I just always like wound up going back to the US because like it just didn't feel. I guess like a lot of times like my Americanness would come out and that would like lead me back going back to the US. But in this case, I had because I had thought about it for so long, I really knew what I was looking for in a place to live. And so, in addition to Mexico City being like cool as fuck, I also was like, I want to live in a culture that's much more collective and feels much more
For sure.
communal and feels much more like connected to like land traditions and um yeah, and it's just like there's just like a really welcoming sort of like hospitality vibe here that I thought was really cool. And I just really got on board like my person we live together now, the person I was dating, like I think she's not from the US, so she had already had moved to LA, like not really speaking very much English, like not really, kind of had that experience
Do you
before.
speak Spanish?
I do, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
great.
not fluent though. I'm conversational.
Okay.
I'm definitely not fluent. Yeah. I feel like I can like understand a lot more than I can speak. But it's been really fun, like having that be like a project, kind of like learning Spanish and like learning kind of like cultural assimilation in a way that feels good, like not in like a weird like American white supremacist way. Like it's been really fun.
Very cool.
Um, yeah, so I think I just want to challenge. Like really, the like the short answer is just like I wanted a challenge, and I love being here, and so it kind of just like worked out. Like I just kind of went for it. Me and this person, we just went for it together.
Wow, you're such a free spirit. Um,
Thank you.
what? How did you end up in Los Angeles?
Well, so I went to school in New York. Like I had, I've like thought of myself as a writer since I was a kid, and for a long time, like it was just like, I was 14. Like I can't wait to go to New York and like be a literary writer, not a TV writer. So I lived in New York for like a year. I think being from the South, I just couldn't really survive in the New York culture. I feel like I had to like become this like colder version of myself. It just like didn't work for me, and so But also it comes back to Mexico because when I was a senior in college, I went to Mexico for the first time with a friend of mine who was dating someone who lived in Playa del Carmen, like near Tulum. And so I went with her for like a week and like really fell in love with Mexico. And so I was like, I have to like move to Mexico. And so I spent like the next like year and a half like saving money and tried to like try. There was like 3 times I tried to move here. So the first time was this summer in 2008, and I was traveling around. I wound up meeting someone who was from LA, and when both of our trips ended, he told me he was going back to LA. I was like, cool, I'll go to LA too. Like I said, for the summer.
Yeah.
And I wound up just like, like that situation. Like I wanted to be in that relationship for a few years. I wound up going to grad school in Southern California. So that's how I stayed. And then when he and I broke up, I was like, do I really want to be here? Like, do I want to be here? And by that time I had fallen in love with LA. So I was like, yeah, I do want to stay.
I love that both of your big giant moves were following people. Following loves. Are you like, I love that. Is that good for you? It seems like it's been working out for you to do that.
Yeah. I think until recently, I really described myself as a romantic. So I think there was a time I felt embarrassed that I had followed like a dude anywhere in the planet.
Right.
But now I'm like, no, I think actually like it did work out. Like I don't really have any regrets. I don't think I would have done it. Like I definitely would not have moved here unless I really wanted to. Like, I knew she wanted to come and I was like I was invested in the relationship, but I had to have my own reasons for wanting to be here. Like it had to work for me and my goals and like my life. And so in both situations I felt that it did. Like
very wise.
Yeah.
Where did this romantic streak come from?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess I've just always been kind of like dreamy and like have a really rich interior fantasy life, I guess. Like I don't think I like definitely was like a reader as a kid, but I don't feel like I like grew up like reading romance specifically or something. But I feel like I have had like maybe like a romantic outlook on life in general. I think like the way that I've romanticized being like an artist, I think that was what I romanticized first and foremost. And then like later on it became like, to me, like the romantic ideal of an artist is also someone who's like traveling a lot and like having lots of lovers and just like having lots of adventures and sort of like not really knowing like not committing to anything for too long, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's that. Yeah.
I've never thought about having lots of lovers, but that's really, or like that being like a part of being an artist, but you might be right. And I love that for you. I love that for all of us. Yeah, it's not too late. I love that for all of us. Yeah. So you came from North Carolina, you said? Or South Carolina?
Where I'm from originally?
Yeah.
No, I grew up in Tennessee. My dad was in the military, so I moved around a couple different times, but I grew up in the South. Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and I spent most of my youth in Tennessee, which that's where my parents live.
Would you say, is it like, because I want to hear more about like how you grew up and stuff, but like my first impression is that Black women from the South are not like, how would I describe you? Wispy. I don't know how to describe what word to use, or not as like
you're saying I am wispy?
Yes, or just like okay. Very like I
don't object to that.
I don't even know, artistic and just a total just artist, so would you say that you felt like you found a lot of peers in Tennessee or from the South, wherever you were, or do you feel that you really stood out and felt different?
No, I did not feel like I feel like I didn't know anyone who wanted to be an artist. Obviously, there are artists from the South. There are many, like we out here. But where I grew up, like the small city where I grew up, no, I definitely felt. I wouldn't say I felt weird. I think I felt honestly just like a sense of great superiority to everyone. Like I was just like. Also, my mom is I'm from military, so my mom is not from. My dad is Southern. My mom is not from the South, and she like never.
Where's your mom from?
That, like she's from DC. Which some would say
that's
is
where the real uppity Blacks are.
Yeah, that's my mom.
Yeah, we might say the uppitiest. That's where they're from.
You might say. So that's like half my family. Actually, I don't know if like my whole family's that, but like my mom definitely fits that profile, and like never really let us forget that we are not Southern. So I think I definitely grew up with like a chip on my shoulder about that. but also, yeah, like I really didn't feel like my goals, I had like really no models for how to like pursue an artistic life other than what I was reading in books or like seeing in a movie or something. A lot of which like doesn't apply to black women. Like, like some of it did, but a lot of it, I don't think I realized like people who are artists like come from wealth a lot of the time or like that, that kind of thing. And also just, yeah, like the realities of what that life is like, I think was something, again, I was kind of like imagining, but didn't really know how to actually, for a lot of like even my adulthood, I haven't known how to like actually pursue it because no one around me really was doing that. Like a lot of people I went to high school with like still live in my hometown and like have regular jobs,
100%. And I feel like so many of us relate to that. Like that's very similar to my neighborhood, like, or the way that I grew up. I grew up an immigrant, and there's, my family's artistic, but that's never something that anyone pursued as like a path. Right. And so I'm really interested to know, like, how did this NK kind of evolve from that?
Yeah, well, I think that one thing that was really lucky is like, despite what I just said, I do feel like because I've been writing for such a long time, I think I just have had this sort of, it was just something that did set me apart from like a really young age. And I think I've had a lot of teachers who encouraged me to pursue that. And, my parents both, even though they didn't really know how to like maybe advise me on how to be a writer, they were always like really supportive of me being a writer. I grew up in a house where there's like lots of books and like I had, like my grandma's always giving me like fancy pens and like journals for Christmas, like that kind of thing. So, and then I, like in high school, I did have an opportunity to go to Bennington College in Vermont for 2 summers and they have like a summer program for high school students. I have no idea how I found it. I just found it on the internet, I guess. But I had the privilege to attend that program and take like writing workshops as like a high school sophomore and a junior. And then I met a lot of people who were from like the coast who were going to like very different high schools than I was going to and like had been exposed to really different things that I had been exposed to and had really different like aspirations for college that I was exposed to, like that kind of thing. And so I feel like that experience being, my mom's, I think my mom's like, she's really into like exposing us to things. Like that's a word she used a lot. Like she wanted us to know that there was a world outside this small town that we happen to be living in. And I think she was successful at that. Like my parents also really loved like a road trip and we didn't travel internationally a lot, but we definitely saw a lot of the US. And then I went to college like outside New York City I went to like a really kind of weirdo arts. It wasn't an art school, but it was like an artsy liberal arts college. Like
Which
30 minutes outside New York. I went to Sarah Lawrence.
Oh,
for undergrad. Do you know
very cool.
anything about?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yes.
So then, so I lived like close to the city, got to hang out in the city a lot. I think like just that, like, and because I had been imagining it for so long, like there's a lot, I keep saying there's some degree of like my romantic fantasies, but also I think there's some aspect of like being an artist and the way that I inhabit being an artist is just like, not just like the work I make, but like the way I live my life. It kind of like, you do have to kind of like just imagine yourself into it. So I think that like to some extent, once I was like in New York, it's like, okay, now I'm like doing in real life, like what I had imagined to some extent. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about, because I think one of the things that you mentioned after you took the Working Writer course was that you had gone to grad school for creative writing.
Yeah.
And you didn't know like the actual professional side of being a writer. Like, what would you say like was that missing piece? Like, what gap was there that needed to be filled?
I think just something so simple as like how to set goals. Like, I think grad school was also very like loose, I had deadlines, but it was more or less just write, just write every day. Like if you just write every day, you'll become a writer. But that's not true. Like you have to kind of have a goal for what you want your writing to do or where you want to go with said writing. So once I graduated, I definitely kept writing for a while, but like just felt really lost. Like I was submitting short stories to magazines. But outside of just like writing it, there's like a path that you writers used to follow like in the literary space. But I think it was just that, like, and with regards to like TV, like I think around the time I started getting interested in TV writing, I also hired a creative coach like after the quarantine was over because I was like, I need to like get serious. Like whatever I'm doing is not really work. It's not getting me anywhere. Like I'm doing different projects. Like I feel like I was successful on some level, like in my own estimation of what success is, but I was like, I don't know how to get to like that next level. And I think now I'm just like, oh, it's just like having really specific goals for projects and knowing like once the project is finished, like how to finish the project, which is hard, which had been really hard for me to finish a thing, then like, what are you going to do with it? You know, like, and then once you achieve that, then what are you going to do? Like really having a long-term understanding was like something I did not get from grad school. And I think also just like how to network. Like I think also I thought like network, I just don't, I would, you know, like maybe I'd like be at a writing conference and I'm like, okay, networking is like trying to like talk to like the most powerful person in the room or something. And not even really knowing why, and also like not being good at that, you know? So I think the idea also of like horizontal networking and being like, also networking just means like having real relationships with people who are kind of like where you are or maybe just above you. Like being strategic, but also being genuine about it. I think like that's something else that I feel like I've just learned the last couple of years.
That's really funny. Like, imagine literally walking up to the most powerful person in any room.
I know.
I wouldn't even do that. That is such a, like, no wonder people are terrified to network.
I know.
That is the thought.
And it's funny because like I would do it, but I have like no plan. Like I'm like, okay, now you're in front of this person. Now what? I would like I wouldn't even think beyond like just approaching that said person at a party or something. So
that's so funny that I feel that, you know, the way that a writing career is portrayed from the outside is like quite simplistic, that it is very much just about putting words to paper and magically a career will appear for you without actually knowing any of the real day-to-day activities, skills, and like habits that are necessary to sustain a career, to build one, to get your foot in the door. I think it's like, I think it like makes a lot of people feel so incapable or like they're just incompetent, like they're just not meant for it, they can't do it. And I just think that's such a shame. You know, I think it's such a shame.
That's why I think what you're doing is so amazing, because I did feel like TV, I think I've had, even when I was in grad school, sometimes I would, short stories I was writing would become scripts. But again, I had no idea like what to do with that impulse. I just like didn't know at all. And so TV felt like so rarefied to me. Like I just was like, that's like a world. I lived in LA for 15 years and didn't even seriously allow myself to even say out loud, I'm interested in screenwriting, until like the last 2 years I was there, because it just felt like those people do that. I'm not that. I don't know how they became that, but I can't understand what the gap is. Therefore, it must not be for me. You know, which I'm just like, anyone can do anything if you want to do it.
Literally anyone can do anything. Yeah, isn't it? So
it's just ridiculous, like, once you figure that out.
It's crazy. Anyone can do anything, even you, unbelievably. And I don't mean you and Kay. I mean you, general person.
Yeah, you know? You listening right now, you too.
Yeah, even me, Charla. Charla, even you can do anything. It's truly amazing. It just requires work, which is not fun sometimes, a lot of the time.
Sometimes,
yeah. I noticed on your website that you mentioned that you wrote a book, but there's no link to the book. I can't find the book anywhere. You don't say the name of the book. Yeah,
I know, because it wasn't published, so it's like something.
It's not published. No way. No,
because I abandoned my literary career.
Why?
I think honestly, what we're talking about, I think that like a couple of reasons. I got bored. It was like I published some short stories. I got some positive feedback. But it would take so long. It just like took so long. And it's like, once you have a short story in a literary magazine, you're like, is anyone even reading this? And the answer is probably no. Like, other writers are reading it, but like most people are not reading, unless you're in like the New Yorker, obviously, but I was not at that level yet, you know. But after my biggest a publication I had that was like kind of I would consider like a good publication. Like I was just like, that took forever, and then no one ever read it. Like this, I was kind of over it. And that's when I started getting into like working in the art world and doing more performance stuff, because I wanted that like instant, more immediate feedback.
I got it.
And then also because I didn't know how to finish a project, so I was kind of like, okay, publish a short story. A literary agent, which is like kind of like a dream, like a literary agent reaches out to you, like, do you have anything else? I'm interested in your work. And so I was like, let me finish this book. And the trip I took out of Guadalajara that I mentioned.
Wait, a literary agent did reach out to you, or
yeah.
After you published a short story? That's really awesome.
Yes, it is awesome. And so I was like, I don't have a completed manuscript yet, but like, let me get back to you. And so that part of the reason I was on that trip to Guadalajara was that I was like on a kind of like a DIY writing residency. But because I didn't know how to finish a project, I just like wrote for like 2 years. It just like, but like never, and this might sound weird, but I just like never finished the project. Like I just didn't know how to, do you know what I mean? Like,
it's not weird.
So that dream was done.
Yeah, it's not weird at all. That's honestly, it really makes me, it breaks my heart because I'm like, I want to read that book. And the idea that, you abandoned it because you didn't know what to do, honestly. And that's a legitimate reason to abandon something, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely think it's not like, I don't think it's like a personal, knock against you in any way. Like how in the world are we supposed to finish something when we don't know what we're doing?
Right, exactly. And I think that's why it's in my bio, because I'm kind of like, it's something that I accomplished, but also,
Yeah.
but not professionally, because I didn't, yeah, the professional part was the part, like I said, that I just like didn't, working with a coach, but like really your school, I think, helped me understand like a lot of my creative life, because I also do audio stuff and I do a
Yeah.
couple different things. I'm, not just a writer, but it really helped me understand like, oh, this is like how you, again, like how you organize your time, how you like do it professionally, and how you get to the next level, like aside from just like getting some validation here and there. Like, what do you do with that,
You know what I think is interesting is that I remember a time in my career when if I didn't know something, it was a complete like personal dig against me. It's like my fault that I don't know it. Like if I don't finish
Yeah.
a project, if I don't finish a script, if I don't finish a book or whatever, it's because I can't finish a book. And then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know where in my career that mindset changed. Now I'm very
Mm-hmm.
much, if I don't know how to do something, I need to learn how to do something. if
Yeah.
I if I can't do something, that means that information is missing and that I need to go find that information. And
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
the first class that I find won't be the right one, but eventually I'll find the information that I'm missing. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
what is that about? Like, I don't know if it's because we're women. I don't know what it's
Mm.
about. Like, I don't know if it's this perfectionism across our culture. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like, I know for me personally, I really struggle to like look like I don't know something and to look
Mm-hmm.
dumb and to like make
Same.
mistakes in public. Like, that's really a problem for me that I've had to like really get
Yeah.
over if
Yeah.
I want to do
Same.
anything,
Right. Exactly.
which I do.
Exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
once we decide that we really want to do something, it's really becoming aware of like, oh, I'm doing this thing where if I don't know something, I just assume it's because I'm not meant to know
Mm-hmm.
it, or like
Right. Exactly.
it's some deficiency, it's some personal deficiency, instead of
Mm-hmm.
actually not having the knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
the skill set yet, and knowing that I can always learn it. It's been
Right. Yeah.
such an insane mindset shift to know
Mm-hmm.
that I can always learn. I'm someone who's able and capable of learning. And if I
Mm-hmm.
don't know something, if I can't do something, it's because I must need to learn it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah, I really relate to that. It's like been a huge, like somewhat recent shift in my own thinking. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Did
I
you,
think it's like, sorry, what?
I was gonna ask, like, like being a TV writer, is that something that you have known for a long time? Did you also like have different avenues did you experiment with different career paths before you like landed there, or?
Absolutely. Oh my God. For the, I honestly don't even know how I landed there. I
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily aiming for it directly when I became a TV writer. Like, I was just like madly, desperately trying to get out of my day job. Like, I hated
Amazing.
my, and I was working with wonderful people. I had like a really like solid day job working at a university, doing administration for a university. Like, I was like fine, but I just don't like those jobs. Like, I just didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was expressing myself. And
Mm-hmm.
mind you, now I'm so much more like, I'm older and wiser, and I know that I can express myself, you know, no matter what I'm doing. Like, I can find joy
Find a
now
way.
more and more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I am starting to realize that I just really struggle in traditional employment. I just do. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've had to like really accept about myself. But then I'm also absolutely terrified of doing things on my own and not having the security of traditional employment. And now that I've been a TV writer, I will call TV writing traditional employment. Like, I
Wow.
know
Yeah.
that that's crazy to say because it feels like a job that is so outside of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to creative jobs, I feel like TV writing feels the most like an office job, even though it's absolutely a creative job.
Mm-hmm.
A 90% of your job is being creative and coming up with ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But the schedule is 9 to 5. The schedule is very much like, and sometimes it's, 9 to 8 or like 9 to
Right.
9.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's like
Mhm.
long days. Sometimes it's working after work. It's like writing on the script after work. There are a lot of aspects of TV writing that can feel quite corporate and quite like a regular day job. Whereas
Yeah.
being a freelance writer is absolutely not like like
Yeah.
that. And I would call you a contract. I do call TV writers freelance workers because you
Mhm.
work on a contract, you work usually for a certain period of time and things like that. But it is the closest I would say in entertainment to a traditional office job that I've encountered. You know,
Interesting. Okay.
yes, because it's just such a factory. Like you just have to produce so much. It's like it's hours, it's responding to a boss. Even if you're the showrunner, you're responding to the network, you're responding to the studio, you're responding to producers. Like
Mhm.
you're working for someone. It's
Mhm.
absolutely like a challenging, like it's a cognitively demanding, challenging, interesting, fun job, but it's
Mhm.
very much a job. Whereas
Yeah. Yeah.
everything else that I do doesn't so much feel like a job because I'm making so many of my own decisions. I'm setting my own schedule. I'm doing all these things that true entrepreneurship, I think, really calls for. But
Mhm.
that was such a long way around saying how I got into TV. So I'm going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I'm going to say how I got into TV. Charla here, and I'm interrupting the episode real quick to invite you to the upcoming live virtual networking workshop in Mixer. It's a fun, no pressure event where I'll teach you how to network and you'll get to connect with fellow screenwriters and creatives. This workshop is for you if you have no network to speak of, if you dread networking, or if you've just not been successful in building your tribe. Join the upcoming networking workshop in Mixer and never ever wonder if you're networking the right way ever again. There's a link to the event in the description. And now back to the episode. All right, and we're back. And so the way that I got into TV was that I literally was trying to get out of my day job. I started performing stand up and improv at
Mhm.
night. And that was something that I was absolutely terrified to do, but I really wanted to do it.
Okay.
And uh, I noticed, I think it's just like I'm always trying to do the most in the shortest amount of time possible. And what I noticed in the comedy scene was that the people who, you know, did the most shows, the people who, you know, really created a name for themselves and created like, um, just created like notoriety for themselves, frankly, by doing as many shows as possible, by creating work and putting it out there, by constantly setting the bar higher for like what they want to do and what they
Mhm.
want to get into.
Mhm.
Um like I did it very strategically. Like the first year of doing stand up, like I tried to get into as many festivals and improv festivals like with my improv team so that we could get experience on stage,
Mhm.
so that we could get like credits under our belt. And then I started noticing that the internet was becoming a thing, like YouTube was becoming really important, and I really wanted to get you know, a web series out there because I wanted some sort of
Mhm.
calling card. I wanted people to see what I was able to do so that I could get a job. I didn't know what that job was going to be. I just know
Mhm.
that I don't want to be doing this job. I would rather be doing something that I use my creativity for.
Yeah.
So I made that web series, and then I submitted to different showcases and different, again, festivals and things like that. Um and eventually I got a random email asking me to submit a script, and that's ultimately how I got my first TV writing job. Um
A random email?
I got a random email. This was like
Wow.
I don't even remember where I talked about this. I think I talked about it in like one of my recent YouTube videos about how I got repped. Was just I got my rep and my first TV writing job around the same time. I got like my and it was around the time that I dropped my web series. It was like when I was
Mhm.
promoting the hell out of my web series. That was, I think, like that's an incredibly long way to say that none of it dropped in my lap. Nothing has ever dropped in my lap, and everything that I ever get has been a result of trying. It's been a result of putting myself out there and raising my hand and saying, I want to do stuff. And here's examples of what I can do. And
Yeah.
that's really it.
That's cool. I relate to like some aspect of what you're saying. I think I also feel like whenever I see like people who are really successful, it's always because like they really like put in that time. I'm just I don't know, I feel like I'm just like such a slow right. I feel like I've also like put a lot of stuff out, but also like am kind of like a slow creator. And then as you pointed out, like my standards for myself are so high that I often like don't want to share the things that I have made, even when they are well, I don't know what the rest of that thought was, but that's cool. I think that's really cool. Your path.
I think so. What do you think about this then? Because I think that what you're saying is so common, and I feel that way. Like I'm an extremely slow creator. I feel like I really have to pace myself, and I tend to shut down if I'm overburdened or overwhelmed. So I got to watch it. And then I also can be such a perfectionist that I don't want to put things out. But what I've started doing is putting things out before I'm ready, essentially. Like doing what I would call like a test case scenario where I put something out and then knowing that I can always improve it. Like for instance, when I put out the first version of the Working Writer School, what did I think that was ready? Did I think that was the best version of that course? No, but did I think it might be helpful to people? Yes. So I was just like, you know, what am I going to prioritize? Am I going to prioritize the fact that like, am I going to hold on to this thing for maybe another year? Or can I put it out, get a sense of what's good and what's bad, refine it, make it better, you know, continue to give that direction and guidance, you know? So
yeah. I think, yeah, well, one thing I'm hearing, which I think is interesting, is like in that scenario, and in some of the work I do as well, like at this, I think the idea that like you saw an opportunity to be collaborative because like the kind of the people could, give you feedback and help you shape it. But I think the fear, I wonder if you have this, like the fear that I have, I think, because I sometimes have this voice in my head that's sort of like, as a Black woman, you're only going to get X amount of chances. And so if someone is introduced to your work and it's subpar, or you seem, I guess it really is just like unperfected or something. If you seem like you're not ready yet, and someone has introduced you. This is like just anecdotal. I think this is just like feedback I've received from like the world, maybe other people, maybe from their experiences, maybe not from their own experiences. But I think that is a fear that I have, where it's like, well, if it's not ready, like someone sees this and just like writes me off entirely, and I don't get a second chance to do it again. That doesn't stop me from putting things out that I feel like are not my stand. Like I said, like I feel like some things I've made, some things in the audio space that I'm like known for, that I'm kind of like, oh my god, like don't Google that. You know, it's like, but I feel that way. I'm kind of like, even though like it's there and people, whatever, like I said, it did get some, you know, it had some recognition or something, but I still feel like, oh, like I would do it so differently now, and it's like cringy to me to know that someone could Google me and find that. Like people listening, don't Google me.
I mean, I am right there with you, but I don't know. I think my perspective has changed because I have more experience now under my belt.
Yeah.
I like when I first started, I was very like, this is my calling card. Like it has to be something that I think is good. And that was the only bar. Like, do I think this is good?
Yeah, yeah.
And if I didn't, I didn't put it out. And if I did, then if it made me laugh, then that was really the only bar. Yeah. And I also didn't want to be written off for putting something out there that I, you know, that wasn't good or that I didn't believe in. But it's like, if I could, that was the bar. If I could believe in it, if I think it's funny, then it's out. But that was definitely a fear of being written off for putting out something that wasn't good. But I think that my perspective has changed so much also because there's just so much more on the internet. I think it's like so much harder to make a splash anyway that like I don't know, I really think it's up to the creator. Like I think it's really up to the creator and what their intention is. From my point of view, because there's so much on the internet, because it's so hard to stand out and make a splash, like I only want to put things out that I really care about and that I think are helpful in some way right now. That is what I'm working towards, is like putting things out that I think are worthwhile and helpful and like will add something positive to the huge mass of things that are out.
Yeah, yeah.
But then somebody else might look at that and be like, because there's so much out, it doesn't matter what I put out. But I don't know. I think it really depends on your intention and your, like, what are you trying to do? What's the goal here? Is it practice? Are you trying to get practice? Are you just trying to get practice being seen? Like, what is the intention? And go from there. Because I don't think it's like bad. And I think it's kind of harder to get written off because there's so much. So
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And not only that, I think big people flop too. So it's not like
I know,
your level of notoriety is going to save you from putting out something bad.
So true.
You know?
I know. Yeah, that's so true.
Absolutely. Like Ava might put out a flop. Who knows? You know, it can happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, like, you know, I think about failure a lot, and I think we were talking before about like that tension or that I call myself a perfectionist in recovery. So like that idea that like it has to be perfect, or like not wanting to be seen as not knowing something. I realized around the time I quit my literary career was when I was kind of like getting into the art world, is because I was like, I want to just do something different. And that time of my life, I really embraced that. I just embraced like that thought. Like I think I was like, this is going to be really. I started doing performance and audio stuff, and I was like, it's going to be really punk because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing at all. And I did a lot of performances that like I would consider failures because they didn't live up, because they were like they didn't live up to my standards, you know. But I did keep doing it, and I think I just like learned so much from that time period, just like not being so precious about what I'm making and like not really caring and being like, I'm doing this for me. But I think also like I was able to do that partly because I like had no aspirations to like become professional at it. And I think again, like that was a tension that I'm like slowly understanding in my audio career. I'm kind of like understanding now what it means to be a creative professional. But at that time, I still like really didn't know. I was making a podcast with a friend for fun, and we were kind of like, we know no one's going to buy this show. Like the show won't make any sense outside of like maybe the art space. And so that was like really freeing to just be like, no one, Pineapple Street Media is not going to be interested in this, so we can be free from like that expectation of like selling the show. And it was really fun. But I think like I'm just like kind of just reflecting on like that time in my life versus how I feel now, where I'm kind of like, okay, but I want to like sell this script or something. So I'm not really giving myself the space to be like, but what do you want to do? Like, what's your? I think it's just really important for you to remember like what is my goal with this thing, and like not really think so much about like random person who's reading it who I'm imagining, you know.
So, well then, what is your goal right now?
I think so. I have like like my two projects I'm working on now is a podcast that I'm making that is about, it started out as a podcast that it was pitched to me as like, do you want to make a show about Blackness and mental health? And it's become more of a thing about how people's mental health experiences, especially for marginalized people, are really shaped by like beyond biology. Like they're not outside of like your biological experience, which is real, that there's like a way that health and mental health are like is socially constructed by like oppressive societal forces. And it's a narrative documentary. And I feel really excited about that. I think I really relate to like when you say like I'm putting something out, and it's like I haven't had experience like hosting and producing a show before, but I feel good about it because I feel like I really care about the subject matter, and I feel really prepared in that way. And I'm just like, this will be helpful even if like I don't maybe live up to like my standards as like an audio producer. Like I know that it's a contribution that I feel good about making. And then my other thing is like the script that I was writing when I was in the Working Writer School, and I think, which, you know, so it's a half-hour comedy pilot. And I think I had just, until I heard you say that just now, I had forgotten like, yeah, you can still define like what your goal is for it. And like I think something being helpful, it also matters to me. But for a second I was like, well, my like little my creative art project, like it's not like TV's not helping anyone. But I know that that's not true. Like I don't think that's actually true. I think that obviously I really am someone who like thinks that narrative is really important. I think that, yeah, like story is like a really important way to sort of like talk about I don't know, it's like beyond representation, but I think like that is something that is a goal for me. I want to see this character that I'm writing. I'm just like, that's like kind of has motivated my fiction always. It's just like, I'm writing about like a certain kind of Black woman that I don't really see represented in me. and also a certain kind of Black woman who is like me or like someone I'd be friends with who I think is funny. Those are like I guess like those are the two things I think has motivated my like my fiction writing for a while. So I don't know. I mean, something that's coming up is like I had this goal. One of the reasons I did this school also, and one of the reasons I hired a coach is because I wanted to submit to the Sundance like episodic labs for like
Wonderful.
5 years, but had never finished a script because I didn't know how to finish a script. And so through the school, I understand now how to finish a script, and I wrote like a million drafts, and
I love
finally got a
it.
draft at the end of last. Yeah, I also had a writing group through the Working Writer School for the
I
last
love
half of
it.
last year that was super helpful, and so I had a big breakthrough at the end of last year where I was kind of like, I was just like kept rewriting, like kind of like starting from I started from scratch almost like 15 times with the same character, same general premise. Finally got a draft through the group that I was like happy with. But I saw today on my calendar like that Sundance application deadline is like Sundance applications are opening, and I was like, well, I'm not going to submit because I feel like it's like not. I know that I need to rewrite that scene at this scene. I know I need to redo X, Y, and Z. So now I'm just like rethinking, like maybe I should just be like, you know what? I feel like you'll get the gist based on what I wrote. Like I think it's pretty good, but it's just that thing where I'm kind of like, I know it could be better, and so I feel like I should like wait until it's better because I can't resubmit it next year. You know, like
Right.
it's just something to think about. I think like whether I should just go ahead. I'm not really asking for advice necessarily, but I'm just like now I'm just thinking like maybe you're hanging on to it too tightly, and I can like
Wait, so
reconnect to
you
like my
genuinely
personal.
were not going to submit it this year again?
Yeah, yeah. Because I've been,
Well, I'm
yeah.
glad you're on this podcast because now you're going to have to commit to submitting it publicly.
I know. I mean, I guess what you said made me think like maybe I'm just like, what is the point? Also, it might not even exist in a year. It might not exist. You know, like
Yeah.
so.
You know what I'm waiting for?
What?
I'm waiting for your pledge that you're going to submit it this year publicly.
Oh
When is the
man,
deadline?
it's probably like it's not open for very long. I think it's like a month.
Oh, you
So
have a month.
It opens Feb 1st.
It's not even open yet.
Yeah. I put it on my calendar last year, knowing that it probably opens like around the 1st of February. Like I don't know exactly. I should check
Wait,
and see,
so
but
it doesn't even open for another month, and you have one or two scenes that need to be rewritten, and you still don't think you can have it done in time to submit. And
yeah,
Kay, no, we're not gonna. You're not gonna be happy with me at the end of this episode. Like
hearing you say
okay.
that now, I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
that sounds. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm just thinking about how like much we stand in our own way for like honestly trivial reasons. Like
Okay.
I'm just like
I'm like, yes,
you
give it to
literally have, you know what I mean? No, I'm coming for you because you literally have a full script complete with like one or two scenes that need to be updated, and you have a month and you're just like, nope.
It's not
All
gonna
is
happen.
lost.
I know.
Not
I'm
gonna
just like,
happen
I need
for
6
me.
more months. I know. Listen, I am
Well,
so
yeah.
good. Something I really learned with like working with a creative coach is I am so good. I'm like masterful at self-sabotage, and like it can look just
Yeah.
like this, like the most subtle little. Thank you for calling. I actually really appreciate you. Thank you for calling me out on that.
Yeah.
It's
And
bullshit. It's just like it's
it's
back on my
bullshit.
bullshit.
That's why I think it is. I think it's literally bullshit. I think it's like this I don't even know what it is, like this boogie monster under the bed. Like it's just not real. It's just not true. I think like that book, what is that book? The War of Art. I think The War of Art
Oh
is
wow.
great for that. Have you read that book yet?
I have read it. When I first moved to LA, someone lent me that book, and
Yeah.
I remember. So I haven't. It's like been like 15 years, but yeah, I
It's been
remember like it really resonating.
yeah, it's like one of those things. It's like I don't remember any specific things in The War of Art, but that book is like really great to just get over your petty fears.
Clearly, I should
Totally
return to it 'cause
legitimate
I know
fears,
that.
but still at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And also, might I add, like yeah, because I think probably this is common, like thinking I can't submit to It's like thinking I can't submit to Sundance if it's not perfect, because obviously if I submit to Sundance, it's going to change my entire life. It's like that's also part of what's going
Right.
on, like, which is
It's
also not a realistic way to think
delulu,
about,
as the kids are saying.
I feel like I just cycled through like I was like terror, and then now I just feel relieved. I'm like, oh yeah, I can just like submit the script. It's not that big of a deal. So
I think
I
that's
appreciate that.
I think even what you're doing right now, just like laughing at yourself, I think that's when you know that you've got some sort of breakthrough, just like laughing at your, you
Like,
know, like making this thing so big in your head when it's really like not even that serious. I think that's
yeah.
probably the best thing that you could do. I'm glad that you're there.
Yeah, thank you for your help with that.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah.
So, what do you have to offer to people that are like, either starting in writing or,
Mm,
you know, like at the stage where you were at when you were thinking about when you were writing your book and not knowing like how to finish it and what to do? Like, what would you say, or what do you think that you would have to offer for that?
wow. I think honestly that what's coming up is like a lot of what we have talked about. I think it keeps coming up because it's like really it feels like really important to me. But I think just like for me, like I had to kind of go through like almost like an ego death to like get to a place where it's okay to just be like, I don't know what I'm doing, and like let me just ask a bunch of people. Like now I'm just like not shy at all about being like, hey, like I'm hosting this show. I'm kind of like I just hit up a bunch of people that I kind of know. Will you talk to me for an hour about like what you learned, what you wish you had known. Instead of going into projects thinking I know everything from the beginning because you don't. So I think like that is a really helpful just a helpful way to approach your life. Just be like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know it all at the beginning. You probably don't anyway. So ask people, ask questions, seek out that information. For me, that information was about like project management. Like maybe that's not what you need to know. Maybe it's something else you need help with. But if that's you, like there's a lot of resources that exist about how to like manage a project and like set a goal and like stick to the goal. I think spreadsheets are your friend for creative work. That's something that no one told me that in grad school, but I wish they had. Like if you're writing whether writing a novel or a script, like knowing like weekly like what you're going to work on, I think was really helpful. And I think maybe people don't. I know that I didn't think about creative work being structured in that way. I think I thought that was antithetical to creative work, but you can still be creative within those boundaries. I think boundaries are really helpful. Giving yourself boundaries, giving yourself limits is actually really helpful for the creative process, even though it might seem counterintuitive. Um, yeah, and then I guess like what I always say just about any creative stuff in life in general is for me personally, I feel like if I'm not having fun or enjoying myself, something's wrong. So even though like yeah, like it is like you said, like it is work, like work can be hard, but I think like mostly I'm kind of like that for me that's information. Like if I'm like having a bad time, something is not right. With regards to like writing, to get like into the minutia of writing, it's like if I'm writing like a scene, the scene I'm kind of like it just feels really sticky. I feel like I can't move forward. I'm like it's not right. It's not what the story's
Yeah.
asking for. It's not what you should be writing. And sometimes it also means, a friend of mine is always quoting Toni Morrison when Toni Morrison also writes about how she doesn't believe in writer's block. She just feels like if you feel blocked, it's just like put it down, work on something else. So I also do abide by that. But mostly, yeah, I want to be having a good time. It doesn't mean what I'm writing is always fun subject matter, like that I'm writing about funny things or fun experiences. But like even if I'm writing about something that feels really personal or difficult, there's some sense of like pleasure or gratification or some enjoyment that comes from expressing myself the way that I wanted to express myself. And if you're not, I feel like if you're not getting that feeling, try to like find a different way to. I think just work on something else for a while is what I would say. Actually, like no, try to find a different avenue. Like, I think it'll come back to you when it's like the right time to come back to you.
100%.
And I don't know, like for like the 9 to 5 writers, I feel like I'm not that what I just described. I'm not sure if that will work in that environment. I guess hopefully I'll find out. But for the freelance writers out there,
I actually think a lot of it will. I think a lot of it
great.
will because it's still a creative job and you still have to like perform creativity like
Right? Yeah.
on demand. So I think it
Yeah.
just makes you more I think it just makes you have to focus more, frankly. You can't like be so
Yeah.
dreamy and lost in your mind, even though that's part of the job too. But like then
Both in.
you're
Yeah.
literally getting paid, by the hour to write. So you have
I
to like
know.
kind of focus. Yeah.
And I guess like yeah, like doing it professionally. And again, like I know this because of doing it for audio stuff, not for TV. But it's like there are so many stakeholders. I think it's just like when you're working on your own, kind of like giving yourself limits and boundaries and time deadlines and stuff just helps you prepare for like that time when there's gonna be a lot of people who are invested in what you're making and when you make it, how you make it. Um, yeah.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something I think is really interesting while you were explaining what you have to offer to other writers. And you mentioned ego death, which is something that I just learned about because I experienced it and it was quite intense. Can you
Oh,
explain what
wow.
an ego death is and what your experience was?
Well, I don't know if this is like the psychological associations definition, but what I meant was I had like two experiences, but like I was kind of referring to one more recently where I think I just felt like it was after I had done a couple of audio projects professionally. So it was when I first started getting paid to be creative. And I just had some experiences with, I guess like I'll be vague. Like it was like the pandemic, and then also like my mom died during the pandemic really suddenly, like not of COVID, but like unrelated. And I think like those experiences just really like shook me up in this way where I really saw how I had like shown up to those previous creative projects with a lot of arrogance because I was insecure, and I was insecure because I was too proud to ask for help or too proud to admit what I didn't know. And so I really saw how like I had just really got in my way. I didn't take advantage of people who knew more than me, didn't take advantage of more experienced people. I didn't take opportunities to learn when I could have because I was like so afraid. I think I was more that I was like so afraid of being exposed as like a fraud or something. And so that was the experience I had more recently where I was kind of like, all of that is not helping you get to this next level that you're talking about. Like when you talk about like how you want to, I wanted to do more with like with my creative work. I saw those as the things that had like really held me back. And so that's what I meant just now when I said ego death is like sort of being like, just kind of like I had to humble myself and like realize all those things. And I think when I started seeking out resources, then that's again, like the Working Writer School, like that really, it just like, it did open up like that next chapter for me. At this moment in my life when I was like really did not know how to move forward, the Working Writer School just kind of fell into my lap. Like someone just texted it to me and really has shifted how I think about my entire creative process. And I think like now I understanding how to be a professional creative was something that I had not known how to do since for 10 years, like since grad school. I had a previous experience maybe like 6 years ago where I had like maybe it's more what you were describing, where it was like a like really intense emotional experience that did feel like a death. Like I feel like for like a year I just felt like I had like just this previous version of myself had kind of like died slash I killed it off. Like I was kind of like I want to like not be that person. I realized this person I had been was a performance,
Yeah.
and I was like, who is that? Like, what am I doing? Like, what? Like, I just looked at my life and I was like, I don't want this. Is none of this is like what I wanted, you know. And so I kind of started over. But before I knew how to start over, there was this period of just being like, you have to kind of you're kind of like in the wilderness, like you're sort of in the in the underworld, to use like to extend the death metaphor. You're in the underworld. You don't really know what to do, where to go, who are you? If you're not that person, who are you now? And you kind of like slowly do like return to the surface of the earth. But then even after that though, you have to kind of like figure out like if you're making up all new rules for your life, you have to like sort of figure that out as you go. And I think especially artists, like or a lot of life is just figuring it out, and like not there isn't like really a set path per se. So
Yeah.
that experience was like deeply painful. When I emerged onto earth, I had a ton of anxiety for years because I think like the tension between like knowing I want to do something different and not knowing what to do was like really intense for me. But it was also during that time when I was like I said, like I really was embracing that creative failure. Was like doing a lot of experimentation in public, like a lot of public experimentation, a lot of things that I feel like did not go well. And I think I like really learned a lot during that process. And it was, so it's like it kind of is the newer version is like a more mild version of that same thing. I think where it's like you just kind of realize like I'm getting in my own way. I have to do something totally different because what I was doing before wasn't working. What I had been doing before that was like my perfection is precious, not releasing anything until it's perfect, all that kind of stuff. Do you
I love that.
do you relate to one of those experiences?
I relate 100%. I actually got chills a little bit when you were talking about like murdering your old self, basically, your ego murderer. Because when I was going through that and I think you hit the nail on the head describing the ego death period, which I didn't really know what was happening at the time. Like just this experience of waking up to the fact that you're living a life that is not authentic to you, that you feel like you're wearing a mask, that you feel like, and then you start to realize why you've been doing all those things all those times, like the things that you've internalized, the the perspective of yourself that you have that's kind of been scripted to you by all of the things that you've grown up watching, what you're capable of doing, what you're not allowed to do, like all these
Yeah.
things that like all these programs and scripts that you live by
Yes.
that are not
Yeah.
serving you anymore, that are a matter of fact killing you to a certain extent, but you can't
Yes.
let them go because otherwise who are you?
Right.
Otherwise, like
Exactly.
we're clinging so much to this identity because it's all we've ever known. And you know what's so interesting is that like I think what I created, you know, the previous Charla created in all of her anxiety, with all of her insecurity, all her you know, imposter syndrome, those things are valid too. Those things were great too. Those things were me too. And now I'm
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
interested to see what this Charla creates without so much of that programming, without that mask, without that
Yeah.
I guess fear of being seen for who I
Mm-hmm.
actually am, which so
Right.
many of
Yeah.
us, you know, deal with. But I thought the most interesting part of that experience was clinging so deeply to that identity that we kind of build for ourselves. And I guess it's a sense of safety, a source of safety, this identity, which, you know, for me, therapy has been done wonders to kind of like just embrace and accept. I think like so much of it is like, I think in that previous identity, so much of it is like holding on to things, like so much fear-based living.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
afterwards, it's a lot more like acceptance-based living and like compassionate-based living. Like it's just a
Yeah.
very different way of going about things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm in that process. Like I'm in the middle of like experiencing what am I creating, and I don't just mean like work. I don't just mean like I mean like what life am I creating? What day to day am I creating after this ego death? It's been, you know, I think like a lot of creatives, I find life to be, I'm like in awe of life all the time. I'm in wonder of life all the time. That doesn't mean that I always like it or like what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
You know, there's all this like devastation and sadness, but there's also all of this like awesome shit that goes down
Yeah.
all the time. That's really simple and small and
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I totally feel that way too.
You know, like I think it's like, this is what I mean by wispy artists. Like we're just all just like just jiving, you know, hanging out.
Yeah.
That's all we're
I
doing.
know.
Yeah.
But don't you think part of the ego death also, I think, is like returning to like a more innocent, pure version of yourself, which
Your
is like a
child
childlike
self.
self. Yeah, which I
Absolutely,
think is essential
absolutely.
for artists. Yeah,
It's
to find the
essential for artists.
wonder.
And you know what? One of the things that I found the most difficult to do before my ego death was play. I
Oh
really
wow.
struggled with play, and I struggled with play on stage. And that's what I mean. Like it really affects your work
Yeah.
because you know, the essence of comedy is being playful, you know,
Yeah.
and every aspect of my life before was so like rigid because I was so like afraid to be seen as anything other than what I was like portraying. Exhausting. All this stuff,
Truly.
like when I think back to it, I'm just like, oh my god, like
I
how did I
know.
not
I
age to
know.
100 just doing all this
Yeah.
stuff? And it's totally
Exactly.
true. Just like the child in you kind of finally
Yeah.
gets to like play, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
I love it. What a fantastic conversation with you, NK. I knew it would be. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It was so fun to talk. I wish it was another hour, to be honest.
I wish as well, but I gotta go. All right. Thanks a lot, NK.
See you soon.
I love this episode with Nicole Kelly. It was so honest and so true to being a writer. That's all I've got for you today. Please check out the link in the description for the upcoming virtual networking workshop. Until next time, get out there, get to work.